Hi, welcome to a new season of Art with George. This time I'm going to change direction. We were going, the last couple of seasons we were drawing buildings and other edifices. We started early on with a painting of one of my students. This time I'm actually going to do a painting of my daughter's new dog. His name is Louie, and he's a charmer. He's got a real personality. He can walk into a room and completely dominate the entire room. He's a blend, he's a Yorkshire Shih Tzu blend. And I personally have found it to be a very agreeable blend because his personality just dominates. And I take my own photographs of my subjects. I don't ever take somebody else's submission of a photograph. I like capturing the twinkle in an eye, and I really think I got his effervescence. What I'm going to do tonight, I'm going to start off, probably not get a lot of it done early, but I do plan on getting a lot of the eyes done today. And that's a problem a lot of people have when they paint, be it animal or human. They have a hard time capturing the essence of the energy of the eye. And that's 90% of a painting. If you get that really early, if you capture the warmth of the eye, the spontaneity of the eye, the glow, that really makes for a good painting. I've seen so many people who pride themselves on being great portrait people, animal portraits, but they seem lifeless. They don't capture the energy. With me, there's three things that are vital. You not only capture the appearance. The appearance is essential, but it's also important that you capture the personality. And the third thing is, which is almost the most difficult, to capture the moment in time. Try to get their attitude at the time. Now, Louis always has the same attitude. When he walks into a room, he owns the house. He demands your attention. He's a great dog. He just is. He knows who he is. He's the only dog I ever met who actually knows that he is a vital presence. Most dogs walk into a room that are almost secondary to the furniture, but he knows who he is. It's spooky sometimes because he literally takes over the entire house. And yet, on top of the worst thing is, though, my daughter, Erin, who is his owner, he's totally smitten with her. If she leaves the room for 1 minute, he starts crying like a little baby. He's a year old, so it's not puppy-like instincts. He just simply adores her. And it's charming to watch. I babysit for him every now and then. Believe me, it takes a good hour for him to break his attitude. Now, I made the pupil rather dark. I used Payne's Gray. By the way, people always ask me what brand to use. It doesn't really matter. Brands only matter. The only thing to really keep in mind is don't buy the cheap stuff. They have to have a goodly amount of, they have to be more paint, more substance than some of the paint. If you buy a cheap brand, if you go to one of the secondary outlets, you're going to get a brand of paint that doesn't have a lot of quality to it, and it won't blend with good stuff, so you're dooming yourself to a bad painting. Spend the money, get yourself a good couple of assortments. I'm not saying you have to spend a fortune. In fact, I think it's a waste if you do spend money on good paint thinking it'll make a good painting. It is still 90% of a good painting is the painter. And you could be the best painter, you could be the worst painter on earth and use the best paint. It's not going to guarantee you a great work of art. Now, with this eye, the inside of the eye, most dog pupils are not very lit. They don't have, and they're not humanized. That's another mistake I see a lot of people make. They paint the dog's eye like it was a human eye. The shape is different. The way it takes color is different. And you're almost doomed to failure if you try to paint it like a human eye. People tend to personify animals. It's enough that we do it on TV in all our commercials. Animals do not talk. Yet I guarantee you most kids who are 3 years old think that all cows and ducks can talk. They've seen it on TV. Just another indication of how bad our school system is and how overpowering our advertising world is. I'm going to try to get both eyes in today and a lot of the hair. The hair is another factor. I'm using 3 or 4 different colors for the hair. I'm also going to use a different brush for the length of the hair. For the eye, I'm using just a simple number 3 Winsor Newton. It comes to a rather short point, and it's very good for assembling color and dropping it. But for hair, I'm a real stickler on using a long, narrow brush, and you'll see why in a second. I'm going to start off by putting a little bit of burnt umber, raw sienna, the 3. His hair is such that he's got every color of the rainbow going. And if he walks into a room, his hair actually picks up the color of whatever the room is more lit with. If there's a blue background, his hair is going to look bluish. If he walks into a room that's gray, his hair will become very sober looking and grayish. His hair just picks up every color. So what I'm going to do today is I'm not going to dwell on that so much as I'm just getting the basics in. So I got burnt sienna, raw sienna, burnt umber, and raw umber. Those are the basic colors in his spectrum. What I'm really more interested in, I think, is just beginning to get an assemblage of stuff here. I also have a lot of unbleached titanium. I'm going to start with that first. Underneath his eye, you have a very quiet little amount of color. And the reason I'm going to use a lot of that is because I'm going to have individual strands of color coming out of that. And I need a nice quiet grouping to begin with, so I could put some of the more extravagant colors around it. They'll pop out more and they'll be more dramatic that way. Let's try to get a little bit darker. I'm glad I have this all made up. I have the raw sienna. I'm going to put a little bit of a dark underneath that bridge. Actually should make it a little bit darker. Notice I haven't put the background colors in yet. I usually wait till I have a good third of the painting started, mostly his eyes, and then I'll put it in a background color. I do that intentionally. I want to see how the background is going to be affected by the colors I use initially in his face. I don't want to put in the background colors first. I would rather put in a couple of elements like the eyeball. I want to see how things shape up before I commit myself to a background. So we have a pretty good foothold on this one eye. Now, I'm going to show you a little bit about using a long, thin brush. This is what I'm talking about. Again, I'm using a different brand altogether. I'm not a stickler for one particular brand. This is a Royal Majestic. It's a number 2. It's long and fine tip. A lot of people call this a pointer. I call it a hairbrush. It's perfect for painting hair. So I have 2 or 3 different types of color on my palette. Start off with a dark one. And as you can see, a long, thin brush makes for long, thin lines, like a hair. Now we're going to go into a lighter assemblage of color. And I'm putting the dark in first. I'll put the light in after. And you'll see the eye just pop right out. It's kind of a grayish tone. His hair is intriguing because it's tan, it's brown, and it's also gray. The trick to make it pop out is to use different types of color with each strand. And yet they all have to have a similar kind of presence. They can't be too different. So what I'm going to do is start off with one, go to another one that I already have made up, put it right adjacent to it, and I think a better idea would be, at this point, just to put the entire background in. And I'm going to make it kind of a neutral background. That way, the individual hairs will really pop out. Now, the other problem is the paint's rather wet. It would be a problem with oil. Acrylic will dry rather quickly, and it's not going to be much of a problem. I paint in oil as well as acrylic, and I always have paintings at my house. I jump from one medium to another, and most people find that very traumatic to do, to jump from one to another. How could you keep your senses about yourself? I have a natural way about myself. I know just by the brush in my hand and the way the paint lays on the canvas what I'm dealing with. I also teach a couple of classes, and on top of what I do, I have to always adjust myself to what my students are doing. And that's fun. That could be trying. Now the trick with this is the long sweeping hair. I'm going to take the long fine brush and take some nice long dark strands. And watch what happens. You can actually see the hair popping out. I like that effect. I'm putting a little bit of Payne's Gray. I never use black because I find black to be too serious. So here we go. We're putting a few strands coming out from underneath. Doing it again. I refresh my brush after every stroke. It's good to keep your brush active, full of paint. Some people think that the paint on there is going to last a while. I don't think so. Even people know oil is the same way. You have to constantly go back to your palette and put more paint in. Otherwise, you run the risk of having it diminish in intensity, and that's terrible. I'm going to put a little bit more underneath the eye. It's going to form like a little line, and that's what you want. Now, this is not the final administration of color. I'm going to take this at my leisure, rework it. This is the first assemblage of color, but by no means is the last. So what you see tonight will be a little different. I probably will come to you next week or in the future episodes with more of the painting done. The background might be put in. I might do it right in front of you. It all depends on how the moment plays at home. I'm going to make it a little bit darker underneath the eye. I see that there's a kind of a little line there, and I want to maintain the strength. I'm also going to put a little bit of a light. It's kind of a lightish gray. I'm going to do a little bit of that right now. We'll take a little bit of tan, unbleached titanium, along with a little of the burnt sienna. The three form a nice grayish tone. I might make it whiter, so I'll put a little blob of titanium white in there and see what happens. There we go. That, by all means, don't take paint right out of the tube and put it on your canvas. Play with it. Don't feel that you bought a tube of paint, you're going to put it right on your canvas. It's wrong. No color on earth is perfectly what you get out of a tube. And it behooves me. I see so many young artists take paint out of the tube and they put it right to the canvas. That just irritates me. Do you really see color that intensely? I don't. So we're going to make this darker. Now, Louis is interesting because his eyes look like, they have such incredible personality. He winks. I don't know if he knowingly does it, but he'll sit there and he'll almost pass judgment with his eyes. He'll wink at you. And if you say something, his eyes follow you. It's like he actually comprehends what you're saying. I don't know whether he just is interested in the sound of your voice or if he really comprehends. Wouldn't that be something if he really did? I know he watches TV. He has his favorite programs. He actually knows characters. And that in itself is interesting. I've had dogs in my life and they would not even watch the TV. They were not interested in it. They were just shapes on a piece of metal. But this dog follows the images. If I put the animal station on, if there's a dog on and the dog barks, well, he follows right in. He barks too. It's like there's communication going on. He also is very acute to noises. If any noise happens that he's not familiar with, he is on it. I know most dogs are, but he's got a particular attitude about himself. He's very charming. I'm trying to capture his spirit with this painting more than anything else. I took about 30 or 40 shots, and this is probably the best of his eyes. And by no means am I a professional photographer. If anything, I'm just lucky. When I do a painting of a model, I never hire a professional. I like normal people in normal situations. I find them to be the best subjects. I'd almost be in awe of somebody who's just too beautiful. I think I'd be too challenged. I'd rather take an average-looking lady and make her look beautiful. That's a challenge for most artists. With this dog, it's not going to be much of a challenge to make him look great because he is a charmer. I know that my next door neighbor has a dog, Sadie, who is at least, I'd say about 30 or 40 pounds heavier, and she's a lot bigger than him, but I think he's smitten by her, even though she's a totally different type of dog. And I don't see much of a relationship blossoming. Doesn't stop him, though. All right, now we're going to try to get as much of this eye in today. Notice I'm putting the dark in. I'm going to leave the light for a second coat. Most artists develop a layering effect. They put one color after another after another. I draw my subject first, and that takes a step away from it, because a lot of people don't go to that length that I do. I like having as much information on my canvas as possible. I make less mistakes. I have a step ahead of myself when it comes to capturing the essence of the dog. If the drawing captures a little bit of him, the painting is going to be that much better, because then I add the other element of color. And that's a good element. If you don't have any drawing at all, if you're a Sunday afternoon painter and you're simply throwing color on a canvas, I don't find you to be very serious about what you're doing. It's more entertainment and fun. I'm not saying you should be totally dead serious about your work, but I think if you're going to do a portrait, you should be a little bit serious about the nature of it for the sake of the subject. I think it behooves the artist to be caring about things of that nature. I'm very much an old-fashioned type of artist. I really love what I do, and I admire it to such an extent that I'd hate to waste paint by making it not good. I'm the same way about anything. I do every type of medium. I do paints, pen and inks, pencils. I'm not very fond of pastels. I find I can't do the amount of detail I want to do with a pastel. And I've had a lot of people complain to me that pastels can be made to be as detailed as you want, but I don't know. I graduated kindergarten when I was 4 years old, and pastels do not intrigue me. I'd rather spend a lot of time on a good painting. Now we got one eye popping out. Now, the next step is a lighter shading above the eye. So I'm going to take the unbleached titanium along with the raw sienna. I'm going to form a lighter shade. And that's going to be right here. I'm going to go in different little strands of hair. Do it again and again. Probably the lower ones are going to be a little bit darker just to differentiate the different groupings of hair. One layer of hair is going to cascade upon another, and that alone is going to form a bit of shade. So in essence, it's a third color. I find it a challenge to paint live. I usually work out of my studio, and I'm known for painting at a very slow pace. So this is a challenge in many ways. But it's good for me too. It's good to have a challenge every now and then. And like I said, I could always go back to this and make changes. It's not, the good thing about acrylics, they're not impossible to make changes, unlike pen and ink, which pretty much you're stuck with what you get. I, on the other hand, could take a drawing, and if I don't like it, rip it up and do it all over again. I don't think everything I do is set in stone. Some artists are willing to part with anything. They're happy. They want top dollar for their scrapings. I don't. I find it embarrassing. I would rather throw away 20 bad drawings and hold on to one good one and be proud of it. That's probably why I'm not very rich. But it's another story. All right, we're going to put some dark behind this to make these pop out. The real trick to this is when I take it home and Louis sees it, if he likes it, you laugh, but he will look at it. I don't know what registers in his head, but he will look at it for a second, and God knows what he's thinking. Be interesting to know whether he likes it or not. I know that Aaron, his owner, is going to love it. All right, we can make it even darker around this part of it. Now that I look at it, this can be much darker. So that's our prerogative at this point, to go in and make parts darker. So we're going to do that. Anyway, we're at that point now where I got one eye done. In the next segment, I think I want to show you the other eye. And it's important to see how one eye relates to the other eye. I do that first in every painting. I try to get the eyes in. To me, they're the trademark of a painting. If it works, it's going to work with the eyes. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank for all the input I get from people. It's kind of nice to walk into a store and have some people walk up to you and say, "Hey, you're the artist." I still get a kick out of that, and I like it. And thank you all very much for tuning in and watching. And I want to thank Nutmeg for tolerating me. So here we go. I got one eye pretty much. I'm very happy with it, and we're just going to keep on going. The next segment, we're actually going to put the other eye in. It's going to be complete. And here we go. As it approaches the center of the eye here, it gets darker. So I have to keep that in mind. Luckily, I have all the colors here on the palette. Well, let's hope Louis likes this. Be that less treats I have to buy him. All right. I think the eye's just a tad too dark. But again, it's always better to start with dark.